let's start with maybe the short history, okay, of where you, as you've been tracking and researching over the last few decades, where you sort of saw a real uptick in this kind of lingo of Christian nationalism, the pro and the con for it. So give us a little bit of that brief history of Christian nationalism.
Sure. Well, if I can begin with a brief story from my own personal experience. On January 6, 2021, I was flying across the country, and during the layover, I checked my email, and a reporter wanted me to comment on the Christian images among the rioters at the U.S. Capitol. And this was the first I heard about it, and I was horrified, and I remain horrified. This was a horrific event. And I said, sure, I'll comment on them. And then while I was waiting for her to send me the images, they came about 20 minutes later, I looked through all the footage I could find. And what you see is a sea of American flags, a sea of Trump flags, a sea of MAGA hats, and no Christian images. Well, eventually she sends me some images. One is from the Washington Monument, which is literally 1.5 miles away from the U.S. Capitol building. Several others, a large wooden cross was there. Again, not among the rioters. Among the rioters, you have the Pine State flag, which is a Revolutionary era flag. And so that might be there because perhaps a rioter was thinking that he's joining the Second American Revolution or something like that. You do have the words "an appeal to heaven" on the flag. These could be from judges, but they could also be from John Locke's Second Treatise on Government. And then you have this crazy goth-looking guy holding a Bible in front of the rioters. And so I cautioned the reporter. I said, you might want to be careful with this narrative. I'm not seeing a lot of Christian images. She completely ignored my caution, and the next day came out with a headline screaming, "Christian nationalists have attacked the U.S. Capitol building." And really, in stories throughout the nation, in the New York Times and elsewhere, you have this sort of language, and people like Samuel Perry is saying this is as Christian nationalist as it gets. And so my curiosity was sparked, and I started reading literally everything I could find about Christian nationalism, American Christian nationalism. Basically, no one is using the term before 2006. It appears in a few obscure places, but really no one is using it. No one is saying I'm a Christian nationalist or Christian nationalism is a good thing. What you begin to see in 2006 is a steady stream of books, usually by polemical authors, by activists, by journalists, who are sounding the alarm bells. A group of Christians want to take over America for Christ and oppress literally everyone except for white Christian males. And we should be very, very afraid. I mean, this is just ridiculous literature, frankly. But in 2019, some social scientists joined the party. Whitehead and Perry publish a book, Taking America Back for Christ. And they're serious social scientists. And I don't think they're as obviously motivated by politics as many of the polemical authors. And yet, by their calculations, 51.9% of Americans fully or partially embrace a toxic stew of racism, sexism, homophobism, militarism, and the desire to favor Christianity above all other faiths. And we can dive into this literature a bit more if you'd like later, but this just struck me as ridiculous, even the more social scientific literature. And so this led me ultimately to write the book, Who's Afraid of Christian Nationalism?
Well, okay. So that's good. I mean, it to me, like there seems to be a lot of cultural precursors perhaps to this. I mean, I don't know when like books or films, like I've never seen this, but you think of like, what was it called? The Handmaid's Tale or something. Mm-hmm. There are like cultural forms, like underlying the more explicit, like political, like claims that this is what Christians are doing. You see it in movies, you see it, in popular television shows. So, I always feel like, I think it was Chuck Colson who said, like, politics is downstream from culture. Washington, D.C.'s way downstream from culture. So perhaps there were some cultural manifestations that would have been, like predicting something like a more explicit, like, claim that Christians are, out to take over the nation or make it even more explicitly Christian, because we're going to get into the Christian foundings and underpinnings of our institutions. But yeah, but around 2006, then there's this more like dramatic kind of claim. So,
And I would just,
um,
oh,
go ahead.
I just
Yeah, Darren.
add there, politically, if you are someone who's deeply philosophically progressive or on the left, and you think Christianity is a problem for the country, but you know that politically you can't go right after Christianity.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of conjure up a boogeyman of some sort, Christian nationalism, and then you start painting everything Christian with this Christian nationalist swipe, then that can be more effective politically for you than going after good Christians who are on the left and the right, who are they go to church and they read their Bibles and they're good citizens. That's not politically advantageous. But if you can create a boogeyman, then now you got something you can go after.
Well, and with sort of the second, I imagine too, with sort of the second or third iteration of the sexual revolution, right? That's kind of starts in the early 2000s with the push towards what eventually became Obergefell and Hodge, same-sex marriage. I mean, a lot of the, and then the LGBTQ stuff. Seems to be yet another way to sort of take out the main kind of a roadblock to, the fully liberated, sexually liberated society. Right. So, well, okay, Mark, you mentioned